My name is Mark Bolas, and I am a lifelong student of Rolf's. Everybody's special in the world, but sometimes you're meant to meet other people. And you usually remember those people because you remember the first time you met them. And I bet you a lot of us in this room remember the first time we met Rolf. For me, it was a nerve-wracking experience because I really wanted to get in to study with him and at this school. And he told me after the meeting, it was really quick, and he basically said, "Don't worry about it, you're going to get in." Well, that was too good to be true, so I asked him to double-check my GRE scores and make sure. So he opened up the envelope. It was terrorizing, and he pulled him out, and he looked at him, and he said, "Yeah, I've seen better." And then so as my heart was on the floor, he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "But you know something? We don't want people who always do what they're told." And you know, that's a typical Rolf. First you feel this sort of pride. It makes you feel good about yourself. And relief. Okay, everything's okay, and I'm kind of proud. And then you realize that it's a quiet challenge, and that it was worse. He just told you that, you know, you could have had 800s on those GREs. You have to do better than that. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you. And that's really terrifying and really invigorating at the same time. I took ME 101 with him, visual thinking, and when I took it, it was a good class, but I didn't think too much of him as a teacher or anything else until I TA'd for him in that class. And all the things that looked painless, like he wasn't working at, he had the class scheduled to every 10 to 15-minute blocks, and he had little drawings for every 10 and 15-minute blocks. And they weren't copied from last year. He would redo them every time because he'd always invent something new as he was doing it. And when I thought that, you know, every handout, woe be to the TA, because, you know, those things had to be copied perfectly, and the borders had to be perfect. And these things that you think he wasn't paying attention to, he was paying attention to them all, you just didn't know it. And I guess that's what I've learned now through the years, is he was also listening to every word you said, but you just didn't know it. And he was playing you like you just didn't know it, like a little puppet. And I went to see him about a year ago, and I was talking about what I was working on, and I'm embarrassed, but even to this day, I couldn't help but kind of be up or want to impress him, because he was my teacher, okay? And I go to him and I talk to him about what I'm working on, and I guess I'm trying to impress him a little bit, and he quotes something from my master's presentation 13 or 14 years ago, which was basically my thesis premise that I had forgotten all about. And he quotes it to me, and he was just dead on. I was off track. And he remembers this 13 years later. So he had some contradictions that I've tried to figure out as a student. And I thought I'd share a couple of them because they're making more sense to me now. One is that he didn't care about your project. And at first that kind of gets on your nerves. But to him, you were the project. What you did didn't matter. It was it was you. The other was he wasn't really an instructor or a lecturer. He didn't instruct, and he didn't lecture. Think about those words. He wouldn't do either one of those to you. But he did teach. And the way he'd teach, he just told this to me, it was a month ago or so. You know more than you think you know. That's one of those things he loves to do. You know more than you think you know, and you more than you think you know. But that's how he would teach you, is he would pull it out of you or have you ask for it from him. He was also not a professor, because he would never think so highly of himself that he could profess anything. What he was a guide. And that's really different than a professor, at least from a student's point of view. And he didn't show you where to go, but he showed you where not to go. And he'd do that by listening to you and pulling things out from you. I got really lucky. About a year ago, he was going to Japan, so I took him target shooting, because you can't shoot in Japan, and I just thought it'd be fun. I hadn't spoken to him for a long time. First of all, don't take somebody target shooting that's really into Zen. Because you think they're not going to like it, but they put every one in that little black dot. He did. And afterwards, I talked about some things I wanted to do, and he gave me another one of those quiet challenges. The day before he goes to Japan, he sends me an email and tells me about some grants that I might be able to get. They're due in 2 days. And that was it. It was another little quiet challenge. Well, we did that, and it meant that I got to work with him now over the past 6 months on campus. And I'm so thankful that I was able to do that, because it's let me put some of these things in perspective. But one of the things I was trying to do was to help him organize his work in some form. It was so important, but it was really hard to figure out how to publish it, how to put it into a book. And we realized one of the things was, or what I realize now, is that that's because 3/4 of it is right here in this room right now. And those of us that were lucky enough to get that from him, which was a person-to-person thing, it's not something you write down. We got it while he was here and while he was here now. And that's really what he's about when it comes to his philosophy of life. And all those things he said about projects that you didn't like, and it was all about being right here, right now. He was given one assignment, because I gave up. I couldn't figure out how to put his stuff together. So I did what any good, that I thought a professor does, is you just make the student figure it out. So I said, okay, you have to come up with one artifact a week that is something you'd like to teach, but it has to be an artifact. It can't be one-on-one with a person. So when we were going through his engineering book, I remember opening it up, I was looking at the mind map, and he closed his eyes, and from memory, he just recited this poem. And his first assignment, the first week, he brought in that poem on a card that was perfectly cut, and the borders were perfect, and the ink was perfect. And that poem is the one that's on this card that was handed out. And if you have that card, I'd love it if you could just pull it out right now. And I can't read it because the last time I heard it, his eyes were closed and he was reciting it. So I can't even come close to that. What I'd really like right now is if you could just take a quiet minute and think about him reading that poem to you. Because as he told me when we were going through his engineering book, he basically said, that's all there is to say. And that was right from him. So let's just take a minute and read the poem. Thank you.